What's up, everybody? It's CMP with Craftmaster Productions and Studio1Tutorials.com. Don't forget to stop by Studio One Tutorials and pick up your premium membership. It is 50 cents a day. And also, for all the members, don't forget to stop by the Downloads tab and get your copy of the Astroworld Midi drums. We took most of the songs from Astroworld. I think it's like 12 in there. We transcribed the drums, put them in the Dropbox for you guys so you could flip them, use them in your own tracks, study them, see what was going on. Today, we're going to do a little commentary on the production of Astroworld. I like when Travis Scott music comes around because ever since he first started dropping songs and projects, it was clear that he's a super creative dude. That he creates the way that I like to create, and the way that a lot of people that I like to be around like to create, where they'll take these simple kind of staples in a genre or in a culture, and then just kind of flip them and alter them slightly so that in a way that typically you wouldn't expect, and then it becomes like a new sound. Like when Travis's like first songs was coming out, like Days Before Rodeo and stuff before that. For example, they would use the tubular bell a lot, but they wouldn't use it in the way that everybody else was using it. I mean, there were some songs where you had like 16 triplet rolls on the tubular bell, like like really cool shit that people wouldn't have thought to do before they came out with it. So Astroworld is no different. Really pushing the envelope of trap production while maintaining all the the staples and the linchpins of the sound. So to start out off rip, we talked about the state of sampling in hip hop and trap music recently in a video that I dropped, and this album came out and it just further reinforced my point. There's four Kingsway samples on this album that I counted, as well as that came out of that Wallace Lane pack. And just pretty much every soundscape, whether it was something that was created and then resampled, but everything here is sampled, ran through either halftime or gross beat. It's all halftime and slowed down, and that's what gives you that basic sonic palette throughout the entire album. It was very consistent in that. I think there's a couple songs that are like at 95 beats per minute that they didn't run the halftime on, but everything that's at a trap tempo is going ahead and doing that. Which I thought that was great. Most of the songs in typical Travis fashion have an A section, a B section, a C section, and a D section, which is really cool. I wish more hip hop producers would take to making different, not only drum arrangements, but also different melodic arrangements inside their instrumentals, especially when you have this became prevalent on the songs that he shared with people, like the song with 21, the song with Drake. The beats change with the artist, which just makes it so much more dynamic and interesting. You could take something like Look Alive, right, with with Drake and Block Boy, and it's a super simple beat. Yeah, the rapping is what carries it, and and makes it special. Drake's performance, Block Boy's performance, and it's just another example where in a Travis Scott type of vibe, they're gonna go, him and his producers, they're going to go that extra mile to tweak it and make it something special, which is something that we get reminded of whenever Travis's albums come around. It used to be Kanye used to be that guy, but Travis is starting to slide into that space, which is it was bound to happen. The next thing that I wanted to talk about with respect to this album and the production on it is the drums. The drums are super cool. I love it when we get a project that does not feature the standard snares. It's like they made a real effort to be like, all right, we're not using Polo Snare 9, we're not using the regular basic 808 snare. Didn't hear a lot of open hi-hats on the record. We'll get to that in a second. Let's start with the snares. The snares on this album, they're thinner than normal. Which I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, it sounds good for what they did. Typically I like a wider, fatter, thumping in like that 200 range for snares. But I'm more used to old hip hop. These snares are really thin, really different, exotic type of sounds. I wouldn't necessarily, I wouldn't say exotic, because it's not like they're like some crazy sounds. Like, it's not like he's using a bag of sand dropping against a tin roof as a snare. They're all samples that you could find anywhere. It's just the selection. Like, I feel like they were in there and they were like all those snares that people would typically just kind of scroll past in the sound pack. Those are the snares that they chose to use, especially on the accent snares. The accent snares are really wispy and super light. Another thing is the drums on a lot of the tracks are heavily layered. Like, there'll be two different hi-hats, or maybe not two different hi-hats, but the hi-hats will be at two different pitches. And they will they'll be first of all, these mixes, the hi-hats are pushed way back in the mix, which I super appreciate, because I hate listening to beats where you have an artist on it and the hi-hat is the star of the show. Like, these mixes are similar, like they're less like current SoundCloud mixes and more back towards like the Rick Ross, like the BMF mixes and the Can't Hold Me Back mixes and stuff like that. So the drum mixes where there's a perk, there's two hi-hats, there's two snares, a clap, and a kick. Each one of these elements in the drum mix are separated far enough from each other that they all have their own space, which is really cool, because a lot of times when you hear producers mix, especially when they mix their own stuff, it's like that hi-hat, the snare, and the open hi-hat are all at that same volume. So the top end is really aggressive, and it works for especially in trap where the hi-hat is carrying so much of the rhythm. It works for just an instrumental mix because you don't have that bass. But when you wind up working with an artist, you could tell they had to compensate to make that space. There are drum changes everywhere on the album. I mean, you'll be hard pressed. It's like the opposite of the Drake album, where a lot of it was just like the same hi-hat running all the way through. This is the complete opposite. There is a lot of emphasis that is put into this drum work. As far as the kicks, it's not like a whole bunch of like rack kick over and over and over again. They definitely use different kicks, and whoever was on sound design, I seen some really cool stuff. So there's like a couple acoustic kicks, and this is stuff that Travis has been doing forever, is mixing like acoustic sounds with 808 kits and stuff like that. Definitely appreciate them for that. But they're taking like some acoustic kicks, running them through some clipping, and then shortening the release and then gating them so that this kick is now shaped like a short release 808 kick to stack. And I also noticed quite a few tracks, there's maybe like 3 or 4 that did not have a kick playing the role of the attack at all. It was just a straight up 808 that had a decent attack on it, but it wasn't like those Somatics 808s where they roll out the beginning of it to make room for your kick, so your kick sounds really big. It was more done to get like a smoother texture, and you hear that throughout the album. Now, the tracks that do have kicks with the 808s, one of the things that jumped out the most at me is that the kick patterns are not following the 808s. They're playing off of each other. And that's something I did a tutorial on the site about on studio1tutorials.com, where I go a little bit more in depth about that. And that's definitely something that you guys are going to want to pick up, practice, and master. It is very important to get that technique down. I think the easiest way to do it is to have like still you can create the way that I show you guys how to create, where you make the kick pattern, drag it up to the 808. But what you're going to want to do is once you do that, you're going to want to decide which pattern is going to be the busy pattern. Is it going to be the 808 pattern or the kick pattern? And then you're going to want to start deleting notes from whichever pattern you choose that is going to be the simple pattern. And just kind of practice with that, get an ear for it, figure out how it sounds. A kick with no 808 coming before an 808 kick, them both landing on each other, and then an 808 landing without a kick. That way you can start to build up kind of like a memory of how those grooves work and what those choices do for your groove, so it'll be easier to program if you're not playing your stuff in. I mentioned that there wasn't a lot of open hi-hats, but what there is there's different percussive elements where you would typically find an open hi-hat on that 2 or 4 in a trap beat. So again, this is another one of their signature methods over there with the people who create with Travis and Travis himself, where they will take they'll still use all the same trap rhythms, but they'll switch out the sound. So instead of a clap, it's a snare here. Instead of an open hi-hat, it's a bongo or something. So that you can definitely find that. Ghost notes are back. For you guys that don't know what ghost notes are where you take the velocity of some of the hits that you program, say on a kick pattern, and you lower them down so that the listener can still register it, but instead of the kick coming through like whack, it's just like pop. So you can have a pattern that's all like boom, boom, and then a ghost note before that second boom, so it's boom, 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 boom. That's how you get that, is by lowering the velocity of the note that comes before the note that you're accenting, lowering it down to where it's almost barely audible. You just want to barely hear it. So that was definitely nice to hear that technique back used in a super anticipated mainstream album. Definitely heard a few different kick rhythms that were pretty cool. Layering, having the 808 hit on top of snare hits at the end of a 4 and 8 bar loop added some different rhythms and some different vibes to it, which was really cool. Because there was so much like ancillary percussion used and different hi-hats stacked on top of hi-hats, what the engineers did to make you be able to hear all this stuff, and this is something that you definitely want to implement in your beat mixes, was they used a lot of pan automation. So where you have your accent snare that that would be panned back and forth. The hi-hat rolls that weren't on the main hi-hat rip would be panned. Any background percussion would also be panned. And again, this is panning from right to left, a pan automation, not just spreading it out across the stereo spectrum, which works for being able to hear pieces too, but having the panning back and forth, just adds, it makes it easier to make a wider mix. A lot of people think that having a wide mix has to do with using stereo imaging and things like that. It doesn't. Having a wide mix has to do with giving the listener a reference, how far right something can be panned and how far left something can be panned, because until the listener has a reference of left, right, and center, if you don't give that to them through pan automation, it's all going to sound like it's coming from the same box. So until you do that, using stereo spreaders does nothing at all. Let's see. Yeah, the volume levers for drums we went on. And oh, and also there was a something cool was done on the song Can't Say. I was listening to it and I was trying to find that first kick in the bar, and for the section where the drums kicked in, and I noticed the first bar of that of those drum loops where Travis starts rapping, the first bar they don't use the kick or the 808, so it just comes in with the hi-hat and the snare, for a 4 count, just and then with the with the 808, and that was a really cool pattern, and just a way to add dynamics to Travis's performance and differentiate between the verse parts and the hook parts of the record. So now that you guys kind of got this like this short breakdown and production review of the album, go back to listen to it, try to pick out these certain things and see if there's anything that resonates with you and your vibe, and that you feel like you can add into your productions. This is CMP with Craftmaster Productions. Keep it simple, don't be basic. Go to studio1tutorials.com, get your premium membership. It's 50 cents a day. It comes with the MIDI drum files for Astroworld. It also comes with the MIDI drum files to Drake Scorpion Side A. It also comes to the MIDI drum files to the Without Warning album. It also comes to the MIDI drum files to Views from the Six, and then we're going to be adding a new album every month, or even like this month I did 2 albums to the MIDI drums folder. That way, just bringing you guys more value and more learning tools to help you get to where you want to go in your production career. So you guys, I appreciate the subscription. Thanks again. Keep it simple, don't be basic, and we will catch you on the next one.